So, Shane, it's up to you.
Right.
The stage is yours.
Terrifying, but important. So, first of all, I must preface my talk by saying I'm terribly sorry, everyone, for having missed the morning session. I actually only had this session in my calendar, which is the most inconvenient one possible, because the morning session would have been, I think, 4 p.m. for me, and this session is 1 a.m. So I'm suffering more than anyone else. But no, I'm sincerely sorry I missed the morning session, and I'll try to cover the topic here in a way that allows everyone to get up to date. I'm going to share my screen briefly to cover this topic, because it's important to do a little bit of an illustration of exactly what I'm thinking and talking about. OpenChain has got bi-weekly webinars, and these webinars have been running since April. We've just completed the 13th webinar on the first Monday of October. These webinars have proven to be very useful in terms of allowing people to hear talks, to get experience that they would have got at events. However, there are requests for information that doesn't fit into a simple webinar presentation format. And the most common request at the moment is about open source tooling for open source compliance. Very frequently, it has been pointed out across the global OpenChain community that there are challenges in installing and setting up open source tooling for open source compliance. This might be surprising for you because you have so much experience in the field, but it is happening. And one company gave me an example that they decided in China to set up Fossology and SW360. And they decided not to bring in their engineers, to have the open source team do this. And they thought it would take a couple of hours. In their experience, they found downloading Fossology and getting it to run was pretty quick. But getting it set up with SW360, getting everything working, was not. And because they didn't really know what they were doing, and because they didn't want to bring in technical personnel, they wanted to see, could an open source office do this? It took them a week to get it working. And they know that this is about their lack of experience and their choice not to get internal or external help. But they did it on purpose to try to get the experience of an open source compliance office, thinking open source tooling for open source compliance could be great, and then trying to get it working. The issue was not a tool. It was not Fossology, it was not SW360. The issue was how to set them up and how to get them working together. And doing that was difficult. And that's not the only company who has mentioned this, but it's the most extreme and useful example. So, to respond to the fact that we have a lot of demand about this, I want to suggest that we have some OpenChain webinars with some people from the projects, like let's say Fossology and SW360. And the whole webinar is simply a recording of opening these pages, downloading the tools, setting them up, and running them on a test. It could be a version of the Linux kernel, it could be any other software. But basically download, set up, and run to show people how to do it. And if we do this once for each set of tools, we have permanently passed that knowledge to hundreds of companies. So what I think would be fantastic, if you're willing, is for you to talk about your tools. And perhaps one person from Fossology could work with one person from SW360 and just do a recording of this download and setup together. It could be an hour, it could be 2 hours, it just doesn't matter. Just to show people how it's done. And because we have so many open source tools, because we have things like scan code, we have clearly defined, we've got ORT. there's the potential to do a whole series of webinars. And because you, right here, are the people in the projects who make this stuff, you're uniquely capable to make these webinars just live. There's no need for super preparation. There's no need for everything to be perfect, just to show people how to do this. If we can make a handful of webinars, if we make 2 or 3, it will have enough impact in showing people that open source tooling for open source compliance is real, that I can guarantee you, you will see increased adoption in places like Asia. And I think that will benefit us all. For example, that Chinese company is utterly massive, and it has huge engineering resources. And they sincerely want to use open source tooling for open source compliance. But it was difficult to set up, and they needed to be easier for all the different parts of the company. So if we can show them that, and they can do that, and then they can come back and help us advance the tools, just imagine where we can go. Like I said, we don't have to do something formal. We don't have to do something perfect. But if we do something, if we do a couple of webinars, if we just do fussology and SW360, scan code and clearly defined, how to set up and run ORT, if we just do that, it will be enough to help change a lot in the tooling industry. Because we'll change from a static situation where people can hear use cases and visit the websites into literally having the tutorials to bring them into the community. So that's my proposal. And I'd really appreciate your thoughts on that idea about whether it's something you'd be willing to put some time into and help me with.
I think this is a very, very, very good idea, and to provide, let's say, a hands-on video how to install in certain tools and get them up and running. Okay, so what I can do is to talk to the let's say project leads, whether they have already something at hand, or even ask, or if there is already someone who has recorded the installation hell, then it would be fine that that these videos will be shared.
Sure. And just to show you, I'm going to pull up something from YouTube here. What I'm thinking is to fit into the modern format. Gamer's Nexus is the best one. Overclocking. Okay. So I want to show you how they do this stuff. Okay, yeah, here's a good one. Here is a silly logo to show that, but they did a live overclocking of a computer for 3 hours. And there's no need for it to be super structured. They didn't do everything perfectly. They kind of went back and fixed things. And I think that presentation format can work just wonders. In fact, it might be even more beneficial than having something static and polished and perfect. So it would feel like we're setting this up for real. Goofs and all. And here we go. And that type of support would translate well into multiple languages, and it should reduce the burden of creation. I mean, we can just do it. And if something goes a bit goofy, we can just laugh about it. And that's totally fine. The people who want this are not the people who want artificial perfection. And I think this means the barrier to creation can be really low. And also we can have a much friendlier face, a much more community face than it would be if we, had something very corporate.
Yeah, I see. I think this is really a very good idea. I have a question to you, Shane, because you said that this, let's say, program office on purpose decided not to involve engineering stuff. So did they, let's say, feedback their, let's say, findings to the project itself, or?
Not yet, which I actually told them, go join the list and chat about it. essentially, it's a case of face. The company at this juncture is not too keen to talk about failure. But that's also one reason that if we do a guide or two, and if we're goofing up a little, that will help them come to the table. So no, they haven't come to the project yet. They just let me know. And they were hoping that we might be able to do something about that in the long term. So they even coming to me and letting me know was a big step for them, because it's showing that inside their open source department at this juncture, even with people who used to do engineering but no longer do it, they couldn't do it. It took a week. So yeah, they're a bit shy. That's true in China or Japan, where losing face is quite serious.
Okay, I see. I see.
But once it starts, I just want to emphasize this. About 6 years ago, Panasonic took the stage and they said, of course, we're not talking about Panasonic, we're talking about a company. And then they explained a compliance failure. And they, everyone in the room kind of got to giggle a little bit and understood that we all have this story. And the next event, we had, I think, 5 or 6 of the companies getting up and showing their war stories. So if we can bring them into the fold, I think we'll find that a lot of silent lurkers will suddenly wake up and start sharing and helping. We just have to push.